From CBS News headquarters at the Kennedy Space Center, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Roger Mudd in the CBS Newsroom in New York. In Washington, Dan Rather, Nelson Benton, Phil Jones, Richard Wagner in Los Angeles, Bob Simon in Tel Aviv, Charles Kuralt on the road tonight in Palm Desert, California, and Ed Bradley in South Vietnam with part 2 of a special report on life with the Viet Cong.
Good evening. For the man in the street, the oil shortage so far has been mostly rhetoric, but today there were more signs indicating it's now on the verge of reality. And President Nixon, as he signed the Alaska oil pipeline bill, warned that even if Mideast oil began to flow tomorrow, there would still be an energy crisis this year. More from Dan Rather.
The president said protection of the environment must take second priority now to energy needs. He hinted at possibly higher gasoline taxes and held out hope that more Arab oil may be available soon. He criticized Congress and verbally jousted with 2 senators, Democrat Henry Jackson and Republican Mark Hatfield.
There's the bill. I'd like to give it to one of you, but that has to go to the archives. So, under the circumstances, it has to go here in this little box. The Alaska pipeline's on its way. The environment will be saved, right? No problem. Mark, you're an environmentalist, right?
You're right.
You have no problems on the pipeline?
No great problems.
No great problems. That's a way of saying there could be.
Earlier, Mr. Nixon finished his series of meetings with Republican congressmen about Watergate. Opinions differed about how candid he has been and how candid he will be.
The president's fighting mad. He has some powerful facts. And I don't know why he hasn't come forward before this with some of this information. He's going to do it now. He is really on the attack with facts. And I come out of there feeling very good about the things he has to say. And I'm talking about facts.
What are some of
those
facts?
Well, that's up to him to say, and I understand tomorrow night he is going to be unleashing some of those facts in a speech down south. He's going to be talking about the ITT situation. He's going to be talking more about the whole Watergate fiasco. He's going to be talking about the milk fund deal. He's going to be talking about the Vesco situation. And they're powerful. He's been much too restrained, in my opinion.
Do you reflect Congressman Schuster's attitude or position?
Oh, I think most of us will come away from these meetings with different impressions, different opinions. I wouldn't describe the president's attitude as fighting mad. I think all of the things that he said today have been frankly reported so far pretty fully in the press from the previous meetings of this kind. I think this was perhaps the first meeting that Congressman Schuster attended. This is the 3rd meeting of this kind that I've been at since last Friday.
Later, White House public relations men staged a miniature media event. Presidential counselor Ann Armstrong and Julie Nixon Eisenhower posing beside suitcases filled with messages from Nixon supporters. 5 Florida businessmen who said they got the 31,000 messages in response to newspaper ads later were posed with the president, who told them, quote, "You have made my day." Dan Rather, CBS News, the White House.
Tomorrow night, Mr. Nixon will submit to an hour or more of questions from the Associated Press Managing Editors Convention in Disneyland in Disney World in Florida. CBS News will cover it live beginning at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Interior Secretary Rogers Morton was even stronger than the president in his warning about the energy crisis. Unless there's a startling reduction in fuel use by the end of December, Morton said, we are looking rationing right in the face. The administration is making plans for that rationing. Nelson Benton has the story.
Homeowners who depend on oil for their heat will probably know before Christmas how much less oil they'll have to make do with this winter. Sources who are planning and administering the oil allocation program tell CBS News that the consumer guidelines will be ready within 3 weeks, perhaps sooner. They indicate the guidelines for rationing to the homeowner will be put into effect as soon as possible after that. Government allocation of heating oil to distributors went into effect the 1st of this month, but there have been no controls imposed thus far on how the oil is allocated at the consumer level. It is these consumer guidelines that are soon to be ready. Officials say that homes that are heated by natural gas are not likely to feel as much effect, since the mechanics of rationing the consumer supply are more complex. The administration today set preferential guidelines for diesel fuel to mass transit systems who are being urged to expand in the face of shortages, to farming operations, some of which have already been curtailed due to shortages, and diesel fuel on a priority basis to operations that are actually engaged in the production of fuel itself. Nelson Benton, CBS News, Washington.
Senate Democratic leader Mike Mansfield warned of a possible recession in 1974, and he urged Congress and the president to stop dilly-dallying and start printing gas rationing cards. In a moment, we'll have a report from Walter Cronkite on the Skylab launch.
Of all the leading laxatives, only one, Phenamid, is a gentle chewing gum laxative, and for a very good reason. It's easy to take. Phenamid goes into your system gradually, little by little, and after Phenamid has entered your system, it begins to work gently, predictably, to relieve occasional irregularity. Phenamid, the gentle chewing gum laxative.
You work hard all your life, and where does it get you? In the neck? In the shoulders? In the back? Ooh, what are you gonna do? Absorbine Junior. It's hard-working medicine, speed up circulation where you put it on. Warmth gets deep in the stiff aching muscles. Great. You work hard, you wake, get Absorbine Junior. Absorbine Junior works as hard as you do. You know, you're a good wife.
Three space rookies, Gerald Carr, William Pogue, and Edward Gibson, who've been waiting up to 8 years for this chance, today began what could be man's longest voyage into space. Carr, 41, a Marine officer, Pogue, a 43-year-old Air Force man, and Gibson, a 37-year-old civilian scientist. It was a beautiful morning here at the Kennedy Space Center as the crew of Skylab 3 boarded the spacecraft that would take them up to rendezvous with the orbiting laboratory that will be their home for perhaps as long as 84 days, almost 3 months.
3, 2, we have ignition. We have a liftoff. Liftoff, the engine's building up to 1.6 million pounds of thrust, and Skylab is moving slowly off the pad. It's cleared the tower.
Roger, tower clear. We're getting a roll program.
Steering thrust looks good on all engines.
Roger, smooth ride.
Roger.
The trip began perfectly as the launch rocket, which had suffered pre-flight cracks causing 2 postponements, lifted them toward orbit through a remarkably clear Florida sky.
Smooth as glass, Houston.
This afternoon, the crew and their spacecraft successfully linked up with the Skylab. They'll go aboard tomorrow after spending the night in the ship that ferried them up there. That's to give themselves more time to get acclimated and try to avoid that motion sickness which plagued the Skylab 2 crew, who tried to do just too much too soon. Now ahead for Carr, Pogue, and Gibson, a busy 3 months of experiments to test their own endurance in space, to take literally hundreds of pictures of the sun and the earth to try to teach us more about both, and to take a first-hand look at that spectacular comet, Kohoutek. Dr. Charles Barry, who the longtime astronaut physician, for one, has no worries at all about the length of this trip. He says that after what's been learned from Skylabs 1 and 2, that he thinks man could stay in space, 4 months, 6 months, perhaps even longer. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
Have you noticed how many foreign-made products are being imported these days? Manufacturers overseas are turning out high-quality products at attractive prices. They're providing stiff competition to one American industry after another. At United States Steel, we know one way to meet this challenge is to improve productivity. Here in Utah, at our Geneva works, both labor and management are seeking ways to be more efficient, to produce more steel at the lowest possible cost. Regular meetings like this are helping us find new methods and develop better attitudes toward our work. U.S. Steel is determined to do the best job possible so we can compete. That spirit helped make this country the most productive in the world. We're trying to keep it that way. At United States Steel, we're involved.
In the Middle East, the prisoner of war exchange continued today. No complications were reported in either Cairo or Tel Aviv. Bob Simon reports from Tel Aviv.
Four Phantoms overflew Tel Aviv's airport this morning to salute the second plane load of Israeli prisoners of war. Golda Meir, the 75-year-old prime minister, was there to embrace her soldiers, 28 men today, including 9 Israelis who've been held in Egypt since the 1970 War of Attrition. She seemed on the verge of breaking down many times, especially at the sight of a young wounded Israeli, confused, standing on the ramp clutching a bouquet of flowers. Later in the day, Mrs. Meir said on television that the ice has now been broken between Egypt and Israel. She refused to prophesy, but said she was hopeful further agreements can be reached. Israeli concern is now focusing on her prisoners in Syria, believed to number well over 100. Mrs. Meir claimed tonight that Syria proposed a deal 10 days ago, but backed out as soon as Israel accepted the terms. Meanwhile, 8 Red Cross planes flew to Cairo today carrying 956 Egyptians. The exchange is expected to last another week or so, with the last Egyptians and the last Israelis arriving home at the same time. Bob Simon, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
Israeli radio says another part of the ceasefire was implemented today. UN forces evacuated the first group of wounded Egyptian civilians trapped in Suez City. Today's group numbers 199 out of a total of 1,500 wounded in the city. Secretary of State Kissinger returned to Washington this afternoon after a 12-day, 24,000-mile around-the-world trip. Even though the war in South Vietnam is supposed to be over, there are areas that are still contested, controlled neither by Saigon nor by the Viet Cong. Other territory in the South is controlled by the VC, and it's from this area that CBS News correspondent Ed Bradley sends his second report on life with the Viet Cong.
Hoa Son Village in Binh Dinh Province is part of what is sometimes called the Third Vietnam. Hoa Son is in an area that is firmly controlled by the Provisional Revolutionary Government of Vietnam, the Viet Cong. There is an administration in these areas, and our host told us that all officials were elected by the people. The local administration provides normal government services. In the schools, the children are taught, in addition to the 3 R's, the Viet Cong view of Vietnamese history. In their lessons, they are taught about the Viet Minh's successful struggle against French colonialism, and Americans are labeled as the aggressors in recent history. This area of Viet Cong control is dismissed by the government as sparsely populated. And while there are no large cities, we saw a lot of people in these hamlets that dot the valleys and pop up unexpectedly in the mountains. And all of them are living under the flag of the Viet Cong. There is still fighting here and the resultant death and destruction. Local officials told us of numerous alleged violations by Saigon forces. They said this hamlet was bombed and most of it destroyed. But there were no deaths because all of the people had been evacuated. Many times during our 2 weeks, we saw government airplanes on bombing missions. The villagers also learned to live with the shelling. Most of the valleys and the mountains are within range of government artillery bases. We saw or heard shelling every day, and on a number of occasions had to go into bunkers for protection. The United States conceived the pacification program, which was designed to strengthen the South Vietnamese government's control over the population. People were moved from Viet Cong areas into towns controlled by the government. But in the end, it was just one more plan that didn't work. People who lived in the An Lao Valley in Binh Dinh Province were moved to Bang Son. The American forces used chemicals to defoliate this area, destroying vegetation. This made the land unproductive. People could not support the Viet Cong armed forces or even live there themselves. This woman was moved to a refugee camp. Through an interpreter, she told us of having been forced to work long hours for a wealthy family. Through it all, she wanted to return to the valley of her birth, to her native land. The opportunity came in 1972 during the spring offensive when the Viet Cong captured Bang Son. The refugees came back to resettle and rebuild their lives, living once again under the flag of the Provisional Revolutionary Government of Vietnam, the Viet Cong. The marketplace here is small. Most of the finished goods are bought in areas controlled by Saigon, and the currency here is still the South Vietnamese piastre. Despite their proclaimed independence, the Viet Cong are still tied to the government's economy. Most Westerners find it difficult to understand the attachment of the Vietnamese to their land. Most people in this country are born, live, and die in the same area. Here, the people are working hard to bring life back to their valley. They apologize for the condition of the land, although it was caused by the U.S. defoliation. They promise that once again, the valley would be full of coconuts and bananas and the fields green with rice. Here in the An Lao Valley, the Viet Cong have come home again. Ed Bradley, CBS News, with the Viet Cong.
Greek students demonstrating for educational and political freedom have taken over university buildings in 3 Greek cities, and today in Athens, the demonstration escalated to urban guerrilla warfare. An estimated 15,000 protesters massed in the streets and called for the government's overthrow. Order reportedly has now been restored. Police moved in last nightfall and fired tear gas from armored vehicles. Student-police clashes are said to have killed 2 and left scores of people injured. Today's activity, the most serious challenge the regime has faced, included for the first time Greek workers joining the protesting students.
In the future, the typewriter will have a ribbon in a cartridge, so students can snap in a ribbon in seconds. For professional-looking results, there'll be a special film cartridge, and for mistakes, there'll be a correction ribbon cartridge. The future is now. Introducing Smith Corona's new cartridge ribbon typewriters in electric portable and office models. See them now.
General Electric introduces the Flash Bar 10 Array, the revolutionary flash that lets you take 10 pictures with the same flash bar. The Flash Bar 10 was invented by General Electric for the Polaroid SX70 land camera. With the Flash Bar 10, you have as many flashes as pictures in a film pack. The Flash Bar 10 Array. Another flash of genius from General Electric.
A fire in the middle of the night at a Los Angeles apartment building has left 24 persons dead and 49 injured. Richard Wagner reports.
The alarm was sounded at 11:18 last night, but by the time firemen got to the Stratford apartment building, the blaze was out of control. In terms of loss of life, it was the worst fire in a residential building in Los Angeles history. The primary reason for the extent of the tragedy was that the 64-year-old building had open stairwells and no fire doors. Residents on the top floors, the 3rd and 4th, had almost no chance, unless they leaped to the street, as several did. Last April, the owners of the Stratford were given 4 years to install fire doors and to enclose the stairwell, under a Los Angeles law requiring similar modifications in all such residential buildings. Today, just a few hours after the disaster, the mayor of Los Angeles announced that legislation is being introduced which will cut to 1 year the time in which the new safety measures must be completed. The cause of the blaze is still under investigation, and the possibility of arson has not been ruled out. Richard Wagner, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Senator and Mrs. Edward Kennedy's 12-year-old son, Teddy, has bone cancer and tomorrow will have his right leg amputated above the knee. Shortly after the announcement was made this morning, President Nixon called a Washington hospital and talked with both the senator and his son. An aide said the Kennedys were deeply touched by the president's thoughtfulness. Senate Watergate investigators have turned their attention to the dairy industry's campaign contributions to President Nixon and what effect, if any, that may have had on increased federal subsidies for milk. Phil Jones has looked into the story, and here is his report.
At one time, dairy farmers were expected to kick in between $1 and $2 million to the '72 Nixon campaign. And CBS News has learned that at least one milk producers organization started courting the president as early as August 1969. 2 men have now been granted court immunity to tell what they know about these cash gifts. Robert Isham, former comptroller of Associated Milk Producers Incorporated, which represents more than 40,000 dairy farmers from 20 states, has indicated to investigators that $100,000 in cash was withdrawn from an Austin, Texas bank on August 1st, 1969. This money was in the account of Trust for Agricultural and Political Education, the political arm of Associated Milk Producers. The withdrawal was approved by Associated President Harold Nelson. The $100,000 was given to Robert Lilly, a lobbyist employed by the milk producers. He has been given court immunity, and CBS News has learned that Lilly will testify that he took the $100,000 in $100 bills in a black attaché case to the Dallas airport, where he met a Washington attorney who then flew to Los Angeles and gave the money to Herbert Kalmbach, the president's personal attorney at the time. Jake Jacobson, then an attorney for Associated Milk Producers, has testified under oath that the money was given to Kalmbach to produce a more sympathetic understanding in the administration to the problems of the dairy industry. From that contribution on, the dairymen did have more success with the Nixon administration. And about 18 months later, when they wanted a hike in milk support prices, dairymen were able to see Treasury Secretary Connally and eventually the president. And in 1971, the president finally overruled his agricultural and financial advisors and approved the increased milk support prices, which added an estimated $500 million to the income of dairy farmers. CBS News has also learned that Lilly is prepared to testify that Jacobson asked him for $10,000 for Connally in May 1971, just a couple months after Jacobson had met with the Treasury Secretary. Milk lobbyist Lilly reportedly was told by the Associated Milk Producers president to pay it. He then borrowed $10,000 and gave it to Jacobson. Lilly is also expected to testify under oath that Jacobson got another $5,000 for Connally in November 1971. Jacobson has denied to CBS that he ever gave Connally money, and Connally also denies receiving personal contributions.
I think whatever contributions were made had absolutely no bearing on the decision that was made. Absolutely none. And I am saying that I personally profited not at all from it.
It has also been learned that Dr. George Marin, who took over as head of Associated Producers in 1972, once consulted with former President Lyndon Johnson about the request for contributions by Nixon's friend Herbert Kalmbach. According to Dr. Marin, he told the former president early in 1972 that he wasn't going to continue the illegal contributions, and Johnson concurred in that decision. However, CBS News has learned that 30 checks amounting to about $180,000 were signed by Dr. Marin on April 4th, 1972. But the checks were voided after Kalmbach said, "Forget it, the Nixon campaign doesn't want any more milk funds." This happened shortly after the milk scandal broke in 1972 and about 3 days before the new law went into effect requiring full disclosure of campaign contributions. The dairy farmers have been caught in the middle of this scandal. Back in 1971, one cooperative president wrote, "The soft and sincere voice of the dairy farmer is no match for the jingle of hard currencies put in the campaign funds of the politicians." Dairymen by the tens of thousands reached into their pockets to pay the politicians. But now some of them are having second thoughts.
I feel that where there was wrongdoing, we should throw up our hands and admit it, take the whipping we deserve, and go on about producing our milk and get back to strictly producing milk and not political contributing as we have done and illegal activity as we have done.
Phil Jones, CBS News, reporting.
Federal District Judge John Sirica says he's opposed to legislation to have the courts name a special Watergate prosecutor. Sirica said in a letter to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Eastland that he talked it over with his fellow judges in Washington, and they agree that prosecution is a function of the executive department, not the judiciary. The Dow Jones Industrials gained more than 16.5 points on the New York Stock Exchange today. Volume was 22.5 million shares. The average price per share gained 46 cents on the New York Exchange, 7 cents on the American.
I will not cough. I will not.
When you've got a cough from a cold and you can't suppress it yourself, you need a strong cough medicine. Vicks Formula 44. Formula 44 can help suppress the hacking cough you can't suppress. You can't buy a more powerful cough suppressant than the one in Formula 44, yet it's not narcotic. Formula 44 can help suppress the cough you can't suppress. And now for coughs that come with stuffed-up noses, something new from Vicks.
My baby's got a nasty cough and a stuffed-up nose, poor baby. Here's Vicks new Formula 44D, a strong cough suppressant plus a decongestant. Helps calm your cough and unclog your nose so you can breathe easier. You're gonna be all right, baby.
There are only a few frontiers left in this country, but there are still some of the original frontiersmen. They are trying to hold on to their past. Some are succeeding, but just barely. Charles Carrault reports from on the road in Palm Desert, California.
We drove from Palm Springs to Palm Desert, and right here in the middle of this playground of the rich, where every other house has a swimming pool and every other car is a Cadillac, right here on some of the country's most expensive real estate, is where we found Andy the Donkey Man, living free. Andy the Donkey Man settled down here in the desert in 1931, before the swimming pools and the Cadillacs, and he saw no reason to move out just because Frank Sinatra moved in. Once he and his donkeys moved freely through the sagebrush and cactus, and Andy prospected where he wished and camped where he pleased. Now the highways have boxed him in, and the golf courses have shut him out, and he has parked the wagon he lives in on one of the last vacant lots. And here, surrounded, Andy the Donkey Man is making his last stand.
In them days, you could go on the highway, any highway, they never bothered you. You could drive a team any place. But they made a freeway out of that, and when you go on the highway now, they stop you. And then we used to have big bonfires here, you know, nighttime, and everybody sing and dance and raise the devil, you know, years ago this was, see? And by golly, now if you light a fire now, the fire department will come over here.
What's all this digging going
Well, they're going to put condominiums in here.
They are?
You know what condominiums are?
Yeah, and what's going to happen to you when they do that?
Well, I'll go over there.
Aren't you beginning to feel a little crowded?
Yeah, they kind of push me out, kind of.
Andy used to build fires to cook on, but now there's an ordinance against it. Used to drive his donkeys on the road, but there's an ordinance against it. One of these days they'll pass an ordinance against him. And then the desert, which used to be all his, will be all theirs. Charles Carrault, CBS News, on the road in Palm Desert, California.
That's the news this Friday night. I'm Roger Mudd, CBS News. Good night.
Trying to pass a line of traffic on a hill can be really frustrating. But not many cars can match a rotary engine Mazda's passing power.
The thrill is back.
Getting on the freeway can be a problem. But your new rotary engine Mazda makes it easy.
The thrill is back. Mazda performs.
It's a great feeling to know you're in good shape, but it sure takes the right kind of exercise and the right foods. That's why when I need something refreshing, I often drink grapefruit juice. I like it because it's the best kind of thirst quencher. It's pure and naturally good. 6 ounces, has only 75 calories, and gives me a full day's vitamin C. 100% grapefruit juice from Florida. There's nothing like it if you want to stay in shape.
From CBS News headquarters at the Kennedy Space Center, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Roger Mudd in the CBS Newsroom in New York. See the world television premiere of the science fiction thriller Escape from the Planet of the Apes. This week's CBS Friday Night Movies, tonight at 9, 8 Central on CBS.
Metro Police may have identified a prime suspect in the Ackerman killings. We'll have details coming up next right here on Channel 5 News.
Introducing the 3-spoon test. Can you tell me what's in these 3 spoons?
Coffee.
Which one would you pick as the richest looking coffee?
The middle one.
Why?
Well, it's darker.
You picked Folgers Coffee Crystals because of the way it looked. But the important thing is the taste. But what does it taste like?
Rich coffee. Very good.
Would you say it tastes as rich as it looks?
Yes,